So this morning, I'm going to talk to you about how thinking like a backpacker will help your job search. And there's a study that was done that says that you're going to change your career, change jobs about 11 times over your career. So many of you are already kind of into that. I know my dad, he had like 3 jobs, and one of them was for like 30 years. And I don't know, that's probably could describe your parents as well, or many of you. And so when you think about understanding the job search, you got to figure this out, because even if you're, in the 50s, you still probably have 2, 3, 4, 5 jobs ahead of you. And I know that doing this ministry for over 7 years, that we've seen people come back. They get a 1-year contract, they come back. And so that's not unusual. So figuring out how to do the job search is very critical to just moving forward. I was an Eagle Scout. I don't know how many Boy Scout or Girl Scouts. Raise your hand if you're a Boy Scout or Girl Scout. Okay, keep your hand raised if you're an Eagle Scout. This would be guys only. Okay, so I was an Eagle Scout, and so I was able to go on a backpacking trip a couple of times to New Mexico, a place called Philmont. And it was on that trip that, I was really tested physically, mentally, spiritually. And so that's just like the job search, where you're going to be tested in life. And so I'm just going to walk through. So the first thing, as I learned, if you think about going on a backpacking trip or camping trip, you don't want to do it alone. You don't want to be out there alone. And being part of a team allows you to give help and get help. And that's why you're here this morning. You're here to give and to get. And don't forget the give part, because this is a time where, there's somebody in this room that needs your help, needs a connection to a company, needs just some help maybe doing a mock interview, working on their elevator pitch. We can provide the training, but it really, it takes a team effort, just like when you're on a backpacking trip, to kind of get through it. Somebody's got to lead the way. Somebody's, kind of good at pitching a tent. Somebody's good at camping. Somebody's good at navigation. And that's just the job search. You can't expect to be good at everything, and that's why you need the collective efforts. And that's why the value of this job club, this networking group, is so important, is so that we can get everybody in the same room to try to help one another. It's been said, every now and then I'm going to have these little numbers just kind of random up there. It's been said that you're 8 times more likely to achieve a goal if you have a plan and you have accountability against the goal. And as you know, the first time you even come to us, we provide you a document for a plan. We lay out the plan. We lay out, go to branding, go to resumes, go to elevator pitch, and get accountability, get a prayer partner. So we kind of lay out the plan. But not only is it the plan, but it's the accountability against the plan. And that's why forming up with one other person, or maybe 2 or 3 other people, is vitally important. In our design and focus group, we kind of have that feedback mechanism built in. Every week they talk about their stories, and we've seen many groups stay together through that process. And some of those people have become lifelong friends through that process. There's something about that foxhole experience that bonds you with another person. So look around you. There's somebody in this room maybe that can be that accountability partner, so that you don't do it alone. And so how many people in the room have a job search accountability partner? Okay? We need to have more hands raised. Okay, that's vitally important. That person's not your spouse. It can be just a friend, which you check in once a week. It's not somebody that beats you up when you don't do something, that, badgers you on stuff. It's somebody that says, hey, you weren't able to make that phone call, or those phone calls that you said, tell me what's going on. I just don't feel like I have anything to offer. And then the person responds, right? So it's somebody that you need to be honest and open with to help you not go through this process alone. Okay, so what's the goal here? How will you know when you've reached that destination? You know, those some mountains are higher than others. So you need to understand what is the definition of success. And we talk about the definition of success for the job search in terms of job, career, and calling. And it can just be a job. It can just be a paycheck. Or it can be a career. And you heard this last week in Becky's talk. It can be a career where it's a progression of jobs that look like it's leading somewhere. Or it can be a calling. A calling is something that you're passionate about. Calling is something that we believe that God gives you. It's something that fits your wiring, your personality, your gifting, your passions, just your heartbeat. It's something that matches that. And that's not always ministry, going to like me. Many times it could be something. I talked to a job seeker the other day, and it was about they wanted to mentor other workers. They wanted to mentor maybe even younger, not like teenage or a young adult, but just somewhat younger. They wanted to be in the mentoring process or the coaching process. And so any job that would put them in that mentoring role, they felt like was a calling. Okay? And so we explore this more in Living a Called Life, which starts today. But that's kind of the definition of success is that it's something from God, and it's something that's in alignment with your wiring and your gifting. And obviously, we believe that there's a calling in lots of areas of your life. We believe you should have a well-balanced life in the area of finances, family, health, spiritual, community, relationships, and job. Okay, I put job last. Okay? So it's not all about the job. And if you build your foundation on the job, when you lose your job, your self-identity, your self-worth, that can all crumble. So where are you going? That's one of the first questions that you ask yourself as a job seeker. And once you start on your backpacking trip, that's one of the first questions that you have to ask yourself. And so, is it to Enchanted Rock, which is, near Fredericksburg? It's a small little granite dome that my wife can walk up. Or is it Kilimanjaro? Or is it, maybe it's Mount Everest Base Camp? Not going up all the way, but my son, much to our surprise, left. He actually got back a year ago this month, but he went on a 9-month solo trip around the world. And in the middle of the trip, he says, I'm going to Mount Everest Base Camp. Well, I didn't know what all was involved, but it basically involves flying into the world's most dangerous airport, because it's on a incline, and it's a very short runway, and the winds are kind of tricky in there. And then you can only hike like 3 or 4 hours a day, and because you need to adjust to the altitude. And so he did great. He did get sick coming actually on the way down. I guess it kind of just accumulated in his body. But 50% of the people that come in here to Job Seekers Network have some level of unclarity about where they're going in their next career step. So when we talk about where you want to go on your trip, backpacking trip, where do you want to go in your job search? The more clear you are, the more focused and directed you can be. If you're double-minded, if you're kind of like can go, I have a lot of job seekers, I'm just a jack of all trades, I could do almost anything. well, that doesn't really get you where you need to be, okay? So the more clear you can be in your job search, and that's what Design and Focus that starts February 15th is all about, is getting clear on the job search. And so just like being clear on where you're going on your backpacking trip, you need to be clear on your job search. And then kind of how do you get there? So you need to develop a plan. And we call that a marketing plan. So you don't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to go, to Kilimanjaro. I mean, there's a lot of gear that you have to buy. There's a lot of travel arrangements you have to make. And so just like knowing your destination, are you going to, a lot of people have said it takes about a month for every $10,000 you're trying to earn. Okay, that's kind of an old figure, but I think it's probably still somewhat true. I've also, and we'll get to it in just a minute, but so depending on where you're going, you need to make provisions for the journey. That means you may have to get a survival job. One of the job seekers who's going to come share good news this morning got a survival job at HEB. And that allowed him to continue having income come in on top of the unemployment check, but also to have the time to look for a job. And so you need to think about what's going to help you kind of with the plan to get you to your destination. So the marketing plan is something that we offer as well. And what it includes are things like, what are your skill sets? Your skill sets kind of determine where you're headed. What is your elevator pitch? And then what is your target company? And what's the profile of your target company? And what's the list of 30 target companies? And so having that plan, understanding what you're going after, and that's what when I do my job search coaching with one-on-one with folks, I just want to understand where you're headed and what's your plan to get there and help them develop that. So very critical, just like you're on a backpacking trip. So what gear is going to get you there? So once you determine where you're headed, you got to determine what gear is going to get you there. I remember on going on my backpacking trip, and it said spoon, and so I went to the drawer in my kitchen and picked up a spoon and threw it in my backpack, and I went to my first meeting, and we put it on the scale, and my backpack was like 80 pounds. Well, I didn't know you had to buy a special aluminum spoon that has no weight to it at all. And every ounce counts. And so just like every ounce counts in the packing journey, every skill and ability counts. And what I found with job seekers is they are blind to some of their best skill sets. Because it comes so natural to them, they are blind to that. We had a job seeker come in and they were kind of telling me about what you did, and how you did it. And so one of the things he said, well, I had to make a presentation to our sales team every week and yada, yada. Well, you kind of bypassed that. I said, well, how many people are involved? He said, well, there's about 50 to 75 salespeople in there, and I had to present to them. And so that presentation skill and that motivation, that persuasive skill that you had to have to motivate 50 to 75 salespeople, that doesn't come easily. And he just kind of took it for granted. You have skills and abilities that you are taking for granted. And it's really only until you do an inventory of those skills and the gear that you have, what your core message is, your branding, that you will truly find a job that's a good fit for you. And so take an inventory of what skills you have. Look back through your old performance reviews. Look through an inventory checklist and just say, do I have that or don't I have that? And then check and make sure that you get those. In our branding class that we offer, we talk about boiling that down to your top 3 assets. And so what are those top 3 assets that you're going to bring to the job search? And some of those, this is one typical a list of competencies or gear for the backpacking trip, managing, directing, financial, business analysis, technical. Yours is going to be a different list, but you need to have kind of the bigger category and then the smaller category. And you need to understand that. And this is something we cover in our elevator pitch marketing plan. We have a little document that shows you kind of a list of those things. But think about what that is for you and know that you're blind to some of your best. And so you need to have that feedback. And that's why in Design and Focus, I have people tell their stories. And we have them tell not their success stories, but their fulfillment stories. When were you most fulfilled? When did you feel most fulfilled? And what were you doing? Were you planning and organizing? Were you, using financial skills? I was working on something the other day, and Becky said, "Well, I bet you really enjoy that." And it was an Excel spreadsheet, and she knows that everything I do, I have a theory of my own on. I think everything can be put in an Excel spreadsheet. And I've pretty much proven that over the course of my lifetime. And one of my old bosses, we would joke because I'd put everything, decision matrix, a planning for something, everything goes into an Excel spreadsheet. So what is it for you that you just kind of naturally use? And so you need to make that list. We talked about, some of the targets. But as you're going along, maybe I'm going to Kilimanjaro or Fredericksburg. What are the targets along the way? I remember going to Philmont, and you could within that bigger goal of doing that 10-day trip, there's different choices along the way. Do I want to go to the waterfall? Do I want to go to the meadow? Do I want to go to the mountain, climb the mountain? And so just like there's different choices along the way, there's different target companies that you need to choose. And this is where I think the job seeker kind of falls short, is they don't identify a set of target companies and take 5 of those every week and really drill down on those, try to find networking leads, hiring managers, understand what the org chart is, and just spending hours on that. When we were running one of our accountability teams, what we found was it took an hour of research in order to make one phone call to a cold call to a target company person. And eventually you may have to go into the cold call business. I hate to say it, but we warn you right up front, everybody here is a salesperson. Okay? You're not going to have the luxury of always making a hot or have a warm call. A hot call is someone that actually makes the call for you, comes to the meeting with you. There's 3 of you there, and they're kind of your champion. I had one of those. We talk about how we're a nonprofit. Part of being a nonprofit is you got to raise funds, and so we had this gentleman we were targeting. And one of our coaches had a connection to him. And so the coach actually came with me to the lunch with this potential donor. And the coach did all the talking. I didn't have to do all the talking. So the person that had the most credibility with this person that we were targeting, did the most talking. And so that's for you. Who is that for you? Who can give you that hot or that warm introduction to someone, introduce you to someone? So when somebody says they can introduce you, you need to ask them, well, how well do you know this person? Can you come together with me for lunch? And kind of help guide the conversation. You know who I am, my skills, my abilities. Maybe I used to work for you or whoever that might be in your networking node. You need to have them do that. The worst thing the least desirable thing for you is to do a cold call where you don't know the person. But it comes down to that. You've done all the networking you can. You can't find an entry into that company, into that hiring manager. You may have to make that cold call. So The number 20 is, I think you need to have at least 20, if not 30 target companies. If you don't have 20 or 30 target companies that are not necessarily hiring right now, but just have your top position, you're not broad enough geographically or functionally. In other words, I had a friend who is a PhD chemist. There were only 5 PhD chemist jobs in the city of Austin, okay? And so he had to expand to Oklahoma, Louisiana, ended up getting a job in Oklahoma. And so you need to think about how many companies hire your top person. And you want to make sure you don't target just the companies that have open positions, but you want to target just anybody who hires you, okay? Because we talked about hidden jobs. Hidden jobs are those jobs that are not posted out on the job board. Once a job is posted and you submit your resume, you're one of what, 400? Right? And so you want to go after the hidden jobs, the ones that are or don't have that list of 400 people. You want to be top of mind for that manager who maybe, we talk about how a manager maybe has a team of 10. He probably has one low performer, somebody who's not have the right skill set, needs to move to a different part of the company. And if you kind of convince the hiring manager that you're a better alternative than they are, then maybe he'll move that person to where they're a better fit, and they will help you, move you, slot you right in there. You make sure you use LinkedIn. Doug is going to be here to do LinkedIn, and so you can get help there. We go over this in the marketing plan, so I'll skip over it. Glassdoor is a little tainted because it's full of people who are not necessarily fully excited about the interview process or their work there. So you need to kind of look at that as, in that light. All the positive comments are not necessarily on there. But it's a good thing. My son went over there, and when he was interviewing at Spreadfast, and found out that they were likely to ask math-related questions in the interview. And so he had a calculator ready in the interview process. If he didn't have that, he would have been sunk, unfortunately. Hopefully that's not your son or daughter, but unfortunately that's kind of the way things are now. I think I'm lost without a calculator. So use Glassdoor. Strikingly, there was a survey done of the number of hours that job seekers spend on their job search each week. Can anybody guess or tell me how many hours that survey came back and said? Okay, I have a really huge clue up there. 3 was correct, but less than 5 hours a week. What are you doing? You're getting distracted. You're going nowhere. So you need to step it up. You need to find those hours in the day. I work best in the morning, and so I tend to block my calendar of any meetings or phone calls in the morning, and I'll just crank out 4 or 5 hours of work, and then I'll have my meetings after that or phone calls after that. And so what is that for you? When do you need to block out that time? Because you certainly need to get more than 5 hours a weekend. And obviously we talked about developing the plan and having the plan and letting people know part of what you do. Part of the plan is to let everybody know that you're unemployed. We had a guy go into dry cleaners with, he was in the top position where he needed to wear a suit to work, and so he was getting his suit to the dry cleaners. And so the dry cleaner clerk kind of just started asking all these questions, and he was like, well, what is this guy asking me all these questions for? And it ends up that the dry cleaner was, the clerk had called in sick, and the owner of the business had to come in and work. And the owner of the business was a retired VP in the industry that the guy was targeting to go to work in, and had loads of connections for him. So don't misjudge people. Let everybody know that you're looking. A lot of you are somewhat embarrassed about, I don't know, you're just embarrassed about being out of work. But it's so common nowadays, you shouldn't be. And so let everybody know. And don't, I told this story. I remember very clearly telling this story previously. And a guy went to his soccer practice that night and told all the parents that I'm unemployed and got a job out of it. Got a job connection. So what is that network? What is that set of friends or hobbies or whatever that you can just really let know as part of your daily plan to let them know what you're up to? Okay, so for each, you're obviously, we talked a little bit about this. Having an internal champion is great. Having a warm intro is great. And getting to the point where you have a hiring interview. So that's kind of the list that we talk about. Success metrics as far as a plan goes, I would say, some people have actually gotten to the point where they have a list of number of hours they do, number of contacts they make, number of new contacts they make, right? Not just following with old, but what are the number of new, and then the number of interviews. Okay? Sometimes you're going to hit a barrier if you don't plan right. Or even if you plan right, you're going to hit a barrier. You're going to hit this point where this wall comes up to you and you feel like it's insurmountable. That part of your job search where you feel like it's insurmountable. It's that rejection or that emotional stress. It just lowers your confidence level. And so let's dig into that a little bit because it's not easy. There was a study done that said that you're going to get 24 no's before you get a 25th yes. And when you get a yes, it's going to be yes! But when you get the no's, it's so hard, isn't it? To really, navigate those. And that's why we're here, to help you navigate the no's. Because there is a lot of rejection. You're either underqualified, overqualified, undereducated, overexperienced, too late to the job search. And so you need to just know going in that there is going to be some rejection. If you know going in that you're going to get some no's, it's a lot easier to take them. And so, but know also that there's a yes coming. And that's what we tend to forget. Part of the no process is there's so many no's that we just think there's never going to be a yes. But I'm here to tell you, after doing this for over 20 years, the last 7 full-time, that there's a yes coming for you. There is a yes coming from you. If you hang in there, part of that unemployment percentage are the people who've given up. And that's why we exist, is as a job club, is to let you know there is a yes coming for you. And we've seen it over and over again. No matter how big your no or that feeling of no confidence or rejection is, we've seen that level in lots of job seekers and more. And so just know that there's a yes coming. Know that sometimes you have to go down before you go up. Out on the backpacking trip, you're navigating things, and, we're saying, the leader says, we're going over there. See that hill over there, the top of that mountain? We're going over there. Well, many times It's not, you're at the bottom, we're going over there, but it's going over there. And that's like the job search, is sometimes you have to go down before you go up. Sometimes you have to maybe take a job in a new industry or a new company that's kind of beneath your qualifications. But getting that foot in the door is very important. And so just know that sometimes that you have to, and also, that's also the emotional stress. Sometimes the emotional depression or just the downs of the job search are going to come before the up comes as well. And then sometimes you're going to get to the point where you feel like you just can't take another step. You have lowered self-esteem, lowered confidence, and you don't feel like that your job search is going anywhere. You don't feel like that your job search tactics are working, that your strategies are working, and you get to this point where you feel like you can't take another step, and that's where I would say you need to set kind of an intermediate goal. And I'm going to get through the day. I'm going to get through the week, and I'm going to make these 5 networking contacts today, and then I'll deal with tomorrow. The Bible says that you need to deal with today and not today or not tomorrow or the future. You need to deal with today. And so when you feel like that you just can't go another step, you can. We had a job seeker who tells a story that he had a hard time just getting out of bed every day. He was so down on himself. And so it was through kind of a friend or accountability partner that kind of encouraged him, just get up and set that goal for the day and get going. So I don't know where you're at in your job search, whether you kind of have a week plan or month plan, but know that you setting that intermediate goal is vitally important. Because, like it or not, you're going to encounter some bulls and some bears along the way. And sometimes you just need to turn the noise off. Sometimes you need to turn the television off, the news off. Of all the companies having layoffs, maybe that's a downer for you. Or maybe it's a downer when you hear all these people got jobs. Or maybe it's a downer that the unemployment rate, or whatever it is. Whatever that is for you, you need to really determine and see and understand that which one you're going to kind of feed into. There's a story of it's actually kind of an old Indian story where an old grandfather, his grandson comes to his grandfather and says, I have anger towards a friend of mine who did something to me, and I just can't seem to let it go. And so he starts talking about, so the grandfather starts with the advice of, there's 2 wolves of you inside of you. And one is good. One wolf is there to protect you, and one wolf is there to do you harm. And there's that struggle with listening to which wolf, that you're going to listen to. And so the grandfather ends up telling the story of how if you feed the negative wolf, then it's going to bring you down. But if you feed the positive, it's going to lift you to a higher level. And we know from the Bible that bad wolf is Satan. Satan is here to tell you lies, that you're no good, that your career's over, that you have nothing to offer. But Jesus Christ is here, is the good wolf in the story, is here to tell you that you have immeasurable worth, that you are a masterpiece, that you do have value. And so when we talk about having that relationship with God, that is part of feeding that positive wolf in this story. That's part of letting God come in and fill you with the Spirit that includes love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and self-control and gentleness. And so that's why we've brought the spiritual element into Job Seekers Network. We talked about it in coaches meeting this morning. That's why we have that there, is we know the value of that positive side and not letting Satan bring you down and tell you those lies. And so just know that there's that battle going in, and which one you feed is going to be the one that wins. There's that movie that, they jump in the back of the car and, the kid's always asking, are we there yet? And in the mountain backpacking experience, I kind of view it as this, where you can only see that first mountain, you can only see the tip of that. The rest are kind of blocked behind it. And so we would just say, hey, we're going on this trip. How do we get there? And it's like we'd go over that first mountain, and there'd be a mountaintop, between us and the one we're actually going towards. And again, we'd go through that up and down. And that's where the journey, and that's why you're here on a Monday morning, is to go navigate those ups and downs of the job search and know that they are with us. And so obviously assessing your capabilities is very important, and that's why we have Design and Focus kind of to assess that, because you're continually assessing where you're at in the job search. And that's why we have so many offerings to help you do that. Your resume, your branding, your elevator pitch, marketing plan, interviewing, networking, LinkedIn. That's why resumes, you're continually assessing where you're going and what you need to do course correction. Okay? And maybe it's time for a course correction for you. Maybe things haven't been working and you need to assess your course. We are constantly on the backpacking trip assessing, stopping, every 15 minutes, are we still on the navigational headings? I'm going to tell the story of that I'm going to tell some of the people in Living a Called Life this morning. But there was a story about a pilot coming on and saying that all the navigational gear has stopped working. He basically said, I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is all the navigational gear has stopped working. The good news is that we have a tailwind and we're going really, really fast. And that's what some of y'all are laughing, but that's what your life is. That's what your life is. You're going really, really fast at life, but your navigational gear isn't working. You don't know where you're headed. You don't know what your target is. You don't know how to do the job search, what the job search tips and tactics and strategies are. You don't know what that, where you're even headed as a career. Okay, so sometimes you just have to kind of stop and smell the flowers along the way. I remember kind of walking in the meadow, and we just been kind of in this. We'd been coming off a mountain where it was kind of barren, right? No vegetation, nothing. And we got to this beautiful meadow filled with flowers. And so sometimes in your job search, you do have to stop and smell the flowers. You have to take that walk. You have to take that, go for an exercise, go for that break, listen to, for me, connecting with God is worship music. Go spend 45 minutes to an hour in worship music. Whatever it is, helps you connect with God, helps you take that mental break, and make sure you build that in to the process. And again, we talked about intermediate goals, and sometimes when you feel like You want to quit? I remember, on the backpacking trip, you're with, 10 to 15 to 20 other guys, and you have various levels of fatigue factor. And I remember being really tired and just not thinking I could take another step. And the leader said, hey, let's just get to that clump of trees. And so for you, maybe you need to tell yourself, hey, I'm going to make those 20 networking contacts this week, and then I'll take a break. Okay? So make sure you set those short-term, intermediate-term goals. And then at some point in time, we know, again, I just know that you're gonna have victory. And we hope that victory is a calling. We hope it's, we talk in Design and Focus about Plan A and Plan B. Plan A is kind of your ideal job, something that's a really good fit for your skills and abilities. And Plan B is that stepping stone job, that survival job, or maybe even to a lesser degree, but maybe it's a job that gets you on the way or allows you the opportunity to go towards eventually that Plan A job, that job that we would call your calling, something that you have passion about, something that's of God, something that is of transcendence. And for me, my journey towards Job Seekers Network in earnest as a full-time job started about 12 years ago when I took a halftime conference, and I recommend the book Halftime by Bob Buford. And it's very, we kind of based our living a called life based on some of those principles as well as some of the things that we had worked for us in our lifetime. But it really talked about getting down to, what is my purpose statement? What is my mission statement? Purpose statement is something that doesn't change. Mission statement changes, and it's how I live out my purpose. And so how many people have a purpose statement? Something that doesn't change, okay? We've got some people that have actually taken the course. Or a mission statement, something that changes. So for me, my mission right now is Job Seekers Network. That's how I'm living out my purpose that God called me to. For Becky, who co-teaches the course, homeschooling her kids at one point in time was her mission. It was that stage of life that was just, and it was something that she totally came unexpected that they felt as a couple that God had called them to, and really called you into. So what is God calling you into? What is your purpose statement? Is your navigational gear working or not? Has it malfunctioned and you need to get it working again? Because if your compass isn't working, then you're going to go somewhere really fast. But I can guarantee you're not going to be happy when you get to that destination. So, thank y'all for listening. And I just know that God has something there for you at the end. There is hope. Don't lose hope. Let me pray into this. Father, we thank you that you are the source of our hope and dreams, and that you provide all the navigation gear that we need. And so, Father, I pray for that for every job seeker here, that navigational gear would be intact and working for them, and that you would just use this time to grow them as a person and to draw them close to you, so that they would look back on their job search and say, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.